Welcome to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things West Indies cricket. By the fans, for the fans.
My Roach, and I listen to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 2022 Caribbean Cricket Podcast Awards. It's the hottest show of the year. We're completely decked out. Santoki's in the all black. I'm in my, well, boy.
Listen, Michelle's come full suit and tie, big event. I'm dressed in all black, mourning the death of West Indies cricket out here for 2022. But we're really here. We hope everyone tuning in has had a good Christmas. The last episode of the year, we have to do it big. We have to give out the awards. But Mash, how are you doing, man?
I'm good. And people, this is going to be a long one today. Enough awards to give out. So make sure I've got my Baileys. So free sponsorship. I have Baileys with me. Santoki's got the little rum there, the Ray and nephew. So make sure you got your drink, people. For those of you who are new to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast Award show, this is a live show. So you can, of course, comment as we go through. As we go through each category, by all means, throw your nominations in and we will bring up the best names, the best shout-outs as to who should win, and then we will unveil the winner of each particular award. But Santoki, before we even start the show and before we give out the big awards and so on and so forth, I kind of feel like we need to give a rundown of the year because it's been a chaotic year in West Indies cricket, men, women, under 19s, etc. Man said, "Let me see your shoes." Right, listen, don't want to see that. You'll only see the top half of the show, but Santoki, it's been a chaotic year in West Indies cricket. And before the show, I was trying to write down everything that's happened. I don't even know where we start. So what I'm going to do, Santoki, actually first, is just remind people of the results this year. Okay. So these are we'll start with the senior men's team first. And if you need a pen and pad, people, please write this down to remind yourself as to what's actually gone on this year. We started the year with an ODI series versus Ireland, and we lost that 2-1, Santoki. That seems so long ago.
Whose car got licked? Was it Sheldon Cottrell? Was it that series?
Was that in that series?
Yeah, against Ireland, and the six licked his car.
Yeah, that was definitely Cottrell's car. That was a foreshadow for the year to come, So we started the year with the big L, a 2-1 historic defeat to Ireland in the ODI series. England then came to us straight after that for a T20 series, and we bounced back. We beat England 3-2. The future T20 world champions. Obviously, lots of you will say that wasn't their full side, whatever. But we beat England 3-2. And Santoki, that was the series where Kieran Pollard sang, "You can't keep a good man down." This year's been fully chaotic,
Listen, all that, and we're still in January,
So we beat England 3-2 in the T20 series. Following that, we then went to India for an ODI series and lost that 3-0. We then played India in a T20 series and lost that 3-0. Following that, Santoki. Oh, no, sorry. I'm trying to remember when Pollard stood down. Did Pollard stand down? I think it was after the IPL.
Series. After the IPL.
Yes. So then England then came to us for the Test series. And of course, famously, we won that series 1-0, defeating the higher ranked England. And that was I would probably say, Santoki, that's the highlight of the year.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so we beat England 1-0, and then in between that, just as sorry, no, actually, you're right. It was after that. It was before that, Santoki, because we went to Netherlands next, but Pollard had already stood down by then.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. It was early May. I'm sure Pollard stood down early, mate. So I don't know if it was during the IPL or just after the IPL, but
might be
definitely
right at
May.
the end of IPL or when his team or when Mumbai Indians got knocked out. So then we had the bombshell of Pollard standing down 6 months before the World Cup. In fact, less than 6 months, or was it? Yeah, about 6 months. 6 months before the World Cup, Pollard jacked it in, said he's not going to be captain anymore, retires from international cricket. So he stepped down from ODIs and T20s. Puram became the captain of the white ball sides and promptly took the side to the Netherlands for an ODI series where we needed to get crucial points in the Super League. We won all those 3 games. I went out there and was the sole Caribbean media covering that series. From there, we went to Pakistan to play an ODI series and lost that 3-0. And at that point, Santoki, under Puran's captaincy, everyone's like, oh, we're seeing some positive signs. little did people know what was to come with that as well. From there, Bangladesh then came to us for a test series, which we won 2-0 pretty easily and comprehensively. The T20 series, we won 3-0 at home versus Bangladesh. Then Bangladesh beat us 3-0 in the ODI series at home, which again, that was the Cuss Out series where everyone was talking about the surfaces and how we produce in such weak surfaces for our own, like suiting Bangladesh in our own conditions and so on and so forth. Puran started to get Cuss Outs because we lost to Bangladesh at home. Then India came to us for an ODI series and we lost that 3-0. Then we played India in the T20 series and we lost that 4-1. Then New Zealand came to us for a T20 series and we lost that 2-1. And then New Zealand stayed for an ODI series and we lost that 2-1. And from there, Santoki, we went into the ODI the T20 World Cup and didn't make it. Didn't even make it into the Super 12. Didn't even make it into the actual main stage of the T20 World Cup. And that's and then we finished off the year by getting laid down by Australia in the Test series. That's just the men's senior side, Santoki. That's before you even look at the women yet, or the under-19s, etc. Just what do you make of that year, Santoki? I haven't mentioned any of the Cuss Outs or anything like that. Just what do you make of that year?
As you said, so much happened in that year. I think it's safe to say this sort of formalized our decline in white ball cricket, T20 cricket. This sort of cemented it with that World Cup exit. The ODI, we continued our form. But for me, Mash, I think the results have been overshadowed by sort of everything going on off the field. It sort of overshadowed the results where West Indies going. I mean, off the top of my head, we had at the start of the year, Ramnaresh Sarwan took over as the selector. Then he resigned about 2 months later. You had fitness issues with Shimron Hetmeyer. Shimron Hetmeyer making it back into the side, then deciding he couldn't bother to catch a plane to New York to make the World Cup. You had Evan Lewis cussing out the selectors on Facebook. Andre Russell saying everyone had thrown him under the bus. What else? Sunil Narayan saying he wanted to play for West Indies. Oh, I have my Wi-Fi cut. Hold on.
Yes, people, a live show. It wouldn't be a live show without Santoki freezing people. This is how you know we keep it real, people. Even on the award show, Santoki's gone. I thought his Wi-Fi was updated, but as soon as he started to talk about all the different cuss outs in the year, obviously the players have locked off his Wi-Fi. People, what can we do? By the way, people, so whilst we wait for Santoki to come back, I didn't even do any admin. So if you are watching this live or if you're watching this on the repeat, please do subscribe to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. You can see the ticker tape below at Carib Cricket, Twitter, Instagram, obviously on the YouTube channel. Like, share, subscribe, etc. Hopefully we can hit 4K in the 1.5 days remaining before 2023 hits. If you'd like to support the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, head to www.patreon.com/Carib Cricket and you can become a supporter of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast as well. I have no idea where Santoki has gone. Long-time listeners of the followers of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast will be familiar with this. You won't be surprised to see Santoki's Wi-Fi is played up at the most crucial of stages. But let me continue. Oh, he's back. He's back. 1 second, people. Oh no, he's gone. He's gone. Right, let me continue. While Santoki tries to sort out his Wi-Fi, live show looks like it could be suspended before we go any further, people. But as Santoki was saying, quite a lot has taken place off the fields. We spoke about Hetmeyer failing fitness tests, failing to catch a plane to the World Cup. Dre Russ cussed out Cricket West Indies. Evan Lewis cussed out Cricket West Indies. Narayan said no one had contacted him. John Campbell has got a 4-year drug ban. Pollard was cussed out, then Pollard resigned. Everyone said that Pooran should become captain of the West Indies white ball side. He promptly became captain. He didn't fare any better as captain. He quit straight after the T20 World Cup. A review has been a massive independent investigation has been ordered by Cricket West Indies to find out what exactly has gone wrong with our cricket. That is due to be published early next year. This is before we even look at the under-19, by the way, people, or even look at the women's side of the game. So a whole lot has gone on off the field. There's been licks on the field. It's been a hectic year, people. Before I bring Santoki back in as well, I'll just quickly use this time to remind people as well that at the start of the year, we actually had an under-19 World Cup in the Caribbean, and we came 11th. So I think we should also point that out, that the under-19s, obviously, we've got the West Indies Academy, which is going on right now, which is a really good initiative that has been kind of created operating out of the Coolidge Cricket Ground in Antigua. I think most fans of West Indian cricket are happy to see the West Indies Academy now exist as a thing to bridge the gap between the under-19 level and the senior men's side. Remember, there is also that academies for the boys and the girls at the under-19 stage as well. So there is movements to include female cricketers within the academy as well. But yes, the under-19 team came 11th in the World Cup, in our home World Cup, beating Zimbabwe for 11th place. So that wasn't exactly a great success either. But I would argue that we didn't have a vintage, quote-unquote, crop of players this time round in the under-19 World Cup. We've got some talent, but I wouldn't say it's Jaden Seals level talent or Alzari Joseph level talent, for example. And then with the women's side, who we should also mention, of course, for the women, obviously there's a T20 World Cup upcoming in South Africa early next year. But this year, the West Indies women had... We've recently come off an ODI series versus England, which we lost 3-0. An ODI, a T20 series versus England, which we lost 5-0. I'm trying to remember our results. I was trying to look for all of our results earlier this year. Bear with me, people. I want to bring them all up. Obviously, we had the World Cup as well, in which we got to the semi-finals. So that was creditable. New Zealand women came to us in a T20 series and beat us 4-1 in September this year. In the T20 series, in the ODI series, they beat us 2-1. So we have had quite a lot of defeats. It's been quite a heavy learning curve for the West Indies women's side. At the start of the year, the West Indies women's side went to South Africa and lost 2-1 in an ODI series. And then the thing is, most of the year has witnessed licks for the West Indies women's side. But inexplicably, by the time the World Cup came around, we actually overperformed and made our way through to the semi-final of the World Cup. So it's just quite interesting. It's quite interesting that for a year where we've largely struggled, well, actually they overachieved when it actually got to the World Cup itself. So there's quite a lot of, what's the best way to put it? Our women's cricket is probably in, this is harsh, but it's probably in the weakest shape it's ever been in. But then that's fine, because essentially we've probably got to start from the ground up, given that we have lost a generational talent in Deandra Dottin, etc. And we should also throw in that this year we've had the Deandra Dottin cuss out as well. So she also found a way to cuss out as she retired from internationals as well. So quite a lot has gone on in West Indies cricket across all facets of the game. But people, I've managed to do a lot of waffling. Santoki is back. Let's see his excuses for why his Wi-Fi failed us in the biggest show of the year.
Listen, Listen, the summary of 2022, man. I had to keep with tradition. Cut the Wi-Fi, had to cut out. Even with internet upgrading and everything, the Wi-Fi still had to let me down. But Mash, where we at? What were you waffling about for the last 10 minutes?
Listen, I was trying to hold fort whilst you were gone. Basically, whilst you were gone, I managed to summarize West Indies women having lost basically to everyone this year. But despite that, having got to the World Cup semi-final, in spite of all of those losses, which was a huge overachievement. I spoke about the under-19 team in our home World Cup coming 11th. And then just as you came back on, I reminded everyone that Deandra Dottin also found time to drop a cuss out this year as well. So it's been a hectic year for the senior men's side, the women's side, under-19s. It's been mad, Santoki.
Yeah. No, just what I was following on what I was saying before I cut off. Even Sunil Narayan saying he wants to play for the West Indies, and Desmond Haynes, a selector, saying he hasn't spoken to Narayan. He's got Puran to WhatsApp Narayan about it. You had Yannick Carey picked for his debut in the T20 format, and he went to the World Cup, didn't play. Boy, just all sorts of chaos around West Indies cricket, and I think it's just culminated when you've put in all those factors: players choosing not to represent the Maroon, players not getting selected, combined with the results in white ball cricket. It's kind of culminated, Mash, in this sort of sense of where are West Indies going? I mean, I know every year we sort of had poor performances, but it really has felt like 2022, combined with the sort of growth of T20 franchise leagues, has just led to this sort of existential question about, does West Indies cricket have a future? And I think that's the biggest kind of takeaway from this year.
Yeah, and in fact, actually, it's a really good point you just made there, because as we come to the end of the year, possibly the biggest, it sounds silly when I say the biggest news, but the most pertinent news of the year came right at the end of the year when we saw that McKennie Clark has got a deal for MI Emirates in the UAE League. And the reason why that's quite significant, Santoki, is this is a guy who's played an under-19 World Cup in a team that came 11th, is part of the West Indies Academy, has no regional caps for his home island franchise, is nowhere near the West Indies senior team, but has already collected a franchise bag. And as we go into 2023, Santoki, I think the narrative going into 2023, and I'm sure our South African colleagues would say the same, is this the new era now or is this the new kind of stage for West Indies cricket where our players actually get asset stripped before they even make it to international colours?
Yeah, no, I think that's a very, very pertinent point. I think that's sort of the bigger threat rather than short-term immediate results, looking at who's going to be the new white ball captain. I think we sort of need to, it's sort of been looming over us. Shot out here doing the bogle with the walking stick. But yeah, no, I think the McKennie Clark one, Mash, is a great example of, we've seen players like a Shafane Rutherford, Hetmeyer commit to franchise cricket after they've played a few games for West Indies. Here we're seeing premeditated, even before players have committed to West Indies, they're being taken to franchise leagues. If McKennie Clark does well for MI Emirates in South Africa, he'll obviously get snapped up for the IPL for the Mumbai Indians. And then it's sort of like a cycle we have. So how do we prevent young players going that way? Unfortunately, I don't think West Indies has the finances to do it. And we've talked about it a lot before. The schedule of West Indies cricket at the moment, we only play 6 tests in 2022. That ends by July. What is the sort of incentive? What is the appeal of West Indies cricket at the moment? Combined with, if you're McKennie Clark, you're looking at West Indies taking licks across the T20 and ODI formats. And you're thinking, oh boy, I can have a successful career playing franchise cricket and earn a lot more money. Sort of what is the appeal of West Indies cricket? And I think that's a massive question that needs to be addressed in 2023. And unfortunately, I don't think it's going to go in favour of West Indies cricket.
For real. So you know what, people? Like I said at the top of the show, you know how this goes. Get involved in the comments. Share this. Send it in your WhatsApps. Put it in your Facebook groups or wherever it is, Reddit, whatever you lot do. Share it and tell them the live award show is going on. Obviously, some of you are watching this on the repeat. That's all good as well. Just make sure you press subscribe at some point during this live show as we try and get up to 4K. If you want to do a super chat at any point to show your support, by all means do so. We love all that as well. But Santoki, let's get into it. We got a whole heap of awards to give out today. And our first award of the day, and like I say, people, by all means, throw your nominees into the hat in the chat. Our first award, Santoki, goes out to, I'll just find my sheet, is for the men's test batter of 2022. I think this one's relatively straightforward, Santoki. But people in the chat, do throw your names forward, but I think this is a relatively straightforward answer. Who do we want to talk about here, Santoki?
Boy, I think there's only one sort of name that sort of springs to mind as soon as you say, as you said, probably the easiest category to determine the winner. Our captain, Craig Brathwaite, 687 runs, average 62.45, made the ESPN Test 11 of the year. An exceptional year, even by his standards. And in comparison, I mean, the next highest run scorer for West Indies was Jermaine Blackwood, who averaged 32 runs. So Craig Brathwaite was miles ahead of anyone else in the team and sort of led by example. You really felt the captaincy has added to his game. He's taken on that responsibility. And a standout year, not just for West Indies cricket, but for world cricket, those sort of numbers, averaging 62 across a year, is made all the more remarkable by the fact he is playing for a quote-unquote minnow side, West Indies, who we generally struggle with the bat. So for him to put up those numbers are remarkable. So for me, and I'm sure all the fans, including yourself, Marshall, I think that award definitely has to go to Craig Brathwaite.
100%. And before we obviously give out the obvious nomination for it, the one thing I do want to point out about Craig, which has probably escaped lots of people's minds with Craig's stellar year, is that Craig has faced this year in Test cricket 1,700 balls. Okay, to put that in perspective, the next person to face the next highest number of balls facing the West Indies side is Jermaine Blackwood at 852. Santoki, that's simply phenomenal in terms of showing. But then you've spoken about this so many times, Santoki, that Craig is probably the last of his era in terms of we're not going to see in West Indies cricket, we are very unlikely to see another Craig Brathwaite, someone who loves red ball cricket, really only plays that format and loves to occupy the crease. He is probably the last of the kind now in our region.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's never played a professional T20 game in his career. I think he'll definitely be the last West Indian to sort of have that statistic. And yeah, he's someone who's prioritized red ball cricket. It's paid off for him, as we've seen with the runs. But I think going forward, as we said, the scarcity of Test cricket West Indies players, I don't think we'll ever see a player of the like. So I'd encourage all West Indian fans to enjoy it while it lasts with Craig Brathwaite.
100% people. So as you can see on the screen, very straightforward. There's nobody. I mean, somebody put in the chat Roston Chase, but I didn't I didn't succumb to the draw out. So I'll leave it at that. Very straightforward. Congratulations, Craig. Unfortunately, Craig could not be with us today, but we accept the nomination on his behalf. Well done, Craig Brathwaite. The obvious choice as the men's test batter of 2022. Moving quickly on. And actually, before we move quickly on, 007 says Tage could be the next Brathwaite, but I actually disagree. For the point that Santoki makes, if we were playing 10 test matches a year, then yeah, I 100% would agree with you. But I guarantee that Tage Shandapur right now is thinking, boy, I best learn some T20 skills to maximize my profit going forward, because West Indies don't play enough test cricket for him to just focus on red ball. But Santoki, moving on to the next category, the men's test bowler of 2022. Who do we want to throw into the hat? People, again, get into the chat. Let us know who you think we should throw into that the nominees for that category. Santoki, test bowler of 2022. You're on mute, Santoki.
I think there's sort of three standout performers we can name. You got Kimar Roach. As usual, year on year, he's always coming up with the goods. Jaden Seals has had a stellar year. Alzari Joseph as well. And I guess also wildcard Carl Mayers, you could throw that in. Not necessarily for the amount of wickets he's taken, but the importance of the wickets he's taken. He always seems to get big wickets, particularly in that England series earlier this year, Mash. So I think, for me, there's four standout bowlers who could be nominated. But in your opinion, who should the award go to? Who was our standout test bowler of the year?
Ooh. It's a difficult one, you know. And it's difficult because people look at the recency of the Australia tour, yeah, and say, well, boy, Kimar Roach got injured. He didn't really do anything in Australia. Jaden Seals didn't really do anything in Australia. He got injured as well. Mayers got injured in Australia. So people look at the recency of Australia and then probably say, well, Alzari took wickets in Australia. I think he took 5 at like 50 or something like that. If we're going based on most wickets in the year, well, Alzari took the most. Alzari took 27 wickets at 31, played 7 matches. Kemar Roach took 22 wickets at 27 in 6. Jaden Seals took 21 at 26 in 6. Kyle Mayers took 14 at 12 in 4 matches. I don't know, Santoki. This is a bit of a controversial one here because I feel... So what were our test matches this year? England, three matches versus England, 2 versus Bangladesh, and then 2 versus Australia. I personally feel it's got to go to Mayers. I feel like Mayers... We won that test match versus England because of Kyle Mayers' spell, where he took like 5 for, what was it, 5 for 9. If we don't win that test series versus England, no one's saying it's a positive test year, right? The positive test year all hinges on the fact that we beat England at home. Beating Bangladesh at home would have been expected, right? Getting licked down by Australia would have been expected. The only question mark was how would we play versus England? And I look at that England series and I say, well, I don't know. I feel like Kyle Mayer's spell of bowling, he had England on the ropes. Well, what are people saying in the chat? 007 says it's Alzari. He took the most wickets this year, 29. Steve Webster says it's got to be Seals. Want Your Gal says it's got to be Kyle Mayers. Because he turned up every time. But if you're going with wickets, it's got to be Joseph. Sheldon says Mayers. Sumit says Alzari. He looks like he's finally stepped up. Listen, Santoki, Caribbean Cricket Podcast people, they're all saying it's loads of different... I'm giving you the chance to award it, so you get the nomination.
Listen,
I think it should be Mayers, Santoki. Who do you feel?
I can see I can see Mayer's credentials in this one, but I just think the fact he only played 4 tests in the year kind of goes against him, despite the impact of that. For me, obviously, as we said, he's taken the most wickets, 27, but I just feel this was a standout year for Alzari Joseph. I think against Bangladesh, the 2 tests, he took 12 wickets in total. Been consistent throughout the year, and he's someone who's had question marks thrown above him for the past 2 or 3 years in terms of his consistency, especially in test match cricket. So for me, it was a standout year for Alzari Joseph, consistent across all series. So I think it would have to go to him, Mash.
So people, there you have it. We are giving the award, the men's test bowler of 2022, we are giving it to Alzari Joseph. Those figures in full again: 7 matches, 27 wickets, an average of 31 and an economy of 3.53. And actually, Santoki, I'm going to agree with you for one reason. The reason I think we have to give it to Alzari is because up until this year, Alzari has flattered to deceive with the red ball. So you could argue that this year is the year that Alzari finally started to remind us, probably since his first year in Test cricket, that he can actually deliver in this format of cricket as well and consistently. So Caribbean Cricket Podcast, we give the men's test bowler of 2022 to Alzari Joseph, people. Alzari Joseph. Unfortunately, Alzari cannot be with us today to accept the award, but I believe 007 is from Antigua. So 007 will accept the award on behalf of Alzari Joseph, and we'll make sure that he gets that. So well done to Alzari Joseph. Moving swiftly on to the next category, the men's ODI batter of 2022. This is going to be an interesting award, Santoki, because we've taken ODI licks all year. So I don't know who you want, who are the contenders for this one, Santoki. ODI batter of 2022.
You know what? It's been such a long... It's felt like such a long time since we played ODIs. When was it? The New Zealand series at the beginning of August was the last ODI series. So much has happened since then in the World Cup and the Test series. ODI has kind of gone on the back burner. So I had to sort of look up the numbers. No surprise, the top 3 run scorers, there was no surprise. Shai Hope was first. Nicholas Pooran were third. They kind of stuck out in my mind as performers. But interestingly enough, Shamar Brooks was the second highest run scorer in ODIs. As much as he's taken criticism for his performances with the red ball, he scored 694 runs at an average of 34. to put that into context, Shy Hope averaged 35. So there wasn't much in it between Shy Hope and Shamar Brooks. Some fans might say he's stat padded with a century against the Netherlands. He scored a lot there, but he also had a valuable knock against New Zealand, I think 73 or something. So Shamar Brooks is in there. But for me, I think, the three standouts who can be nominated for this category have to be Shy Hope, Nicholas Pooran, Shamar Brooks. But Mash, I'll let you stew on that. Sort of, what are your thoughts in terms of those three batters and their performances in a format where we've completely struggled in 2022?
I've got no words. I got no words, And we did not throw in Carl Mayers, Carl Mayers, he's also hit 2 ODI centuries this year. Actually, in the last ODI we played versus New Zealand, he got 105 off 110 balls, and I was there when he got his century in the Netherlands, 120 off 106 balls in the Netherlands. And I think it's also critical to point out his strike rate was 95. Everyone else was averaging around 70. So his strike rate was up there with modern standards in terms of what other teams are doing in ODI cricket. Listen, if I look in the chat, we have to bring in the people in the chat and big up everybody in the chat, people. If you're not a subscriber to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, listen, I've brought out my 1950s Windrush clothing, and make sure you're subscribing though. But Frank Lucas says it's got to be Shea. Fireball says Shea. Sachin, Shea. Sports Breakdown, Shea. Michael says Carl Mayers. So somebody has thrown Mayers in here. 007 says Shea. Lukin says Shea or Brooks. Listen, everyone's saying Hope. Everyone's saying Hope. And to be honest, Santoki, I feel like, here's the thing. I'm going to say it's got to be Hope, but I'm saying that it wasn't a vintage year for him. Like, based on the standards that we and I think maybe because we're so used to like seeing Shea average 50, like it's not. Michael says I look like his great grandma. I think vintage wise, it's not been Hope's greatest years. 21 matches, 709 runs at 35. But I mean, 300s, 250s. You have to give it to Hope, Santoki, just because at least he's consistent.
Yeah.
Like,
I think
that's a bad year for him, and it's still better than everybody else.
Yeah, exactly. And I think also the century, he scored a century against Pakistan, a century against India. So he has put up the performances. As you said, in the context of his career in the last 5 years in the format, it's not been a great year for him. But the fact it hasn't been a great year, and it's been an awful year for the team, but he still managed to be the top run scorer. I think, you'd have to give it to Shy Hope. I think Carl Mayers, once again, for me, it's just the fact that he hasn't played. He's only played 14 out of the 21, so 2/3 of the ODIs we played. So for me, I just think his lack of matches means I wouldn't give it to him. I'd have to give it to Shy Hope.
100%. So there you have it, people. I think it's fairly, obvious there. Pretty much all of you have agreed in the chat as well. The men's ODI batter of 2022 goes to Shay Hope. As we understand it, Shay wanted to be here today, but he is currently getting ready for the Tri-Series in Barbados as he tries to ensure that he is part of the Red Bull setup, Barbados Pride setup for the West Indies Championship starting on February the 1st. So I don't know if there's any Bajans in the chat, but you may want to accept the award on behalf of Shay Hope. Moving on to ODI Bowler of the Year, I feel like this one's going to be very, very easy. So Santoki, I don't even think we need to say who should it be. Do you just want to say why it should be this person? Oh, actually,
I think this person
easy. Go on, actually, go on. I want to see what you say.
Actually, you know what? Let's talk it through, because I think ODIs match is something we've said throughout the year. Our inability to take wickets in the ODI format has been our main weakness, and I think that reflects itself in the bowling. I mean, if you look at the wickets columns, we've got Akil Hussain, 30 wickets, leading wicket taker. Alzari Joseph, again, 27 second. But then after that, it's Holder with 13. So just our inability to take wickets. I mean, to put it into context, Nicholas Pooran is somewhere in the top 8 with 6 wickets. Sherman Lewis is up there as well with his 3 wickets in one match that he played. So it's been a dreadful year in terms of our wicket taking. But I think, Amash, as you alluded to earlier, there's been one standout name. I mentioned him just now, Akil Hussain, 30 wickets. He's someone who's really stood out in the format as a spinner. You'd like to see you'd like to see more pace bowlers put their hand up in the format. But in what has been an abysmal year for our ODI side, Akil Hussain has been a shining light with the ball.
Now, this is interesting, Santoki, because I thought you were going to say Alzari Joseph. Now, this is interesting because now let's go into the chat and let's see what people are saying. Koziko says it's got to be Joseph. Sachin, Joseph. Thomas says, what about Akil? Big up Tom Miller, by the way. Supernova says it's got to be Joseph. Sports Breakdown says Alzari. Supernova says Hussain wasn't as good as last year. But with Akil, I think we've got to throw in there, but at least he's consistent.
Yeah.
It's similar to the Hope argument. Yes, I don't think Akil was as strong as he was last year, but he still took 30 wickets this year. I don't think that can be understated. Sheldon says Joseph. 007 says it's Akil or Alzari. Sachin says, what about our best spinner, Nikki P? Holder actually, I mean, Michael says Holder went on rest, but actually Holder had one of his better years in ODI cricket with the ball. This is interesting, people. So Santoki's saying we've got to give it to Akil. I thought Santoki was going to say we have to give it to Alzari. Interestingly, Santoki, ESPN had Alzari in their team, in their ODI team for the year. So I don't know if that does that mean we shift it to Alzari. I mean, let's go for it again. Akil, 20 matches, 30 wickets at 31. Alzari Joseph, 17 matches, 27 wickets at 26. It's one of this. It's Akil or Alzari. I don't know what Santoki. I think it should go to Alzari. You know.
Yeah, I think it's a close one. I wouldn't have any disagreements with either Alzari or Akil. For me, I think Akil is the fact he's a spinner and has managed to take so many wickets is more of a credit to him. He's been consistent wickets across pretty much every series we played in 2022. So just for me, that consistency. But again, I can see in terms of numbers, Alzari Joseph has better numbers. So for me, it could go either way.
Tom's just saying that Akil had those Guyana grounds to bowl on as well. Yeah, Michael says the only reason Akil wouldn't be in the ESPN team is because he's a spinner and there'll be better spinners than him. Boy, Santoki and I are split on this. Do you know
I'll concede and give it to Alzari.
I was about to say I'm going to concede and give it to you because Alzari's already won Test Bowler of the Year.
Listen, we can't knock the man for being successful across 2 formats.
All right, then, cool. Okay, people, we're going to give the men's ODI Bowler of the Year. We're going to give it. We're going to let him double up. We're going to give the men's ODI Bowler of the Year to Alzari Joseph as well. So 007, make sure you pass on the message to Alzari. It's a double award for Alzari. We have him as our Test Bowler of the Year and as our ODI Bowler of the Year. Maybe this is the breakthrough year for Alzari Joseph after all. So well done to Alzari Joseph. Moving on to T20s, Santoki. What a year we had in T20s. Got licked down and then got licked down in the World Cup to cap off a disastrous. Who would have thought, Santoki, after we beat England 3-2 at the start of the year and Pollard was singing to the crowd, that we would end the year not even making it to the main stage of the T20 World Cup. So the men's T20 batter of 2022. Who are we going for, Santoki? Who are our key nominees for this one?
As you said, this has been a year. What a topsy-turvy year for the T20 format. I think for me, 2 standout batters have Nicholas Pooran and Rovman Powell. Nicholas Pooran, despite his criticism and despite resigning as captain, did manage to put up the runs, particularly earlier in the year. And Rovman Powell has been electric with the bat. I think Brandon King as well could be considered maybe for a nomination. But for me, I think realistically, those two, it's between Nicholas Pooran and Rovman Powell. And I think the fact that Rovman Powell, essentially, most fans in the region consider him to be a captain in waiting for the side to be announced pretty much within the coming month or so, speaks to what a great year he's had with the bat and someone who's really emerged in 2022.
Prior to speak, let me see what people are saying here. Lukin says Puram. Michael says, we'll get to the bowler in a minute. Dominic says it's got to be Brandon King. So you mentioned Brandon King, in fairness. Wancha Gal says it's Pooran, Powell or King. Supernova says give it to King. Sachin says it's Pooran or Rovman. Sports Breakdown says it's Rovman or King. 007 says it's Powell. Sorry, it's Rovman, Puran, Mayers or King. Powell or King. Rovman, Puran. Rising Bowler says Rovman. Big up Rising Bowler, by the way. Raku says King. Oh, listen, Santoki, they're all... Sam says it's Rovman. Orin says it's King. What was Santoki? What the... Frank Lucas says it's Rovman. Really and truly, I actually don't think anyone has stood out. No. Because by the time we got to the World Cup, it was a big flop. So as much as I want to say, do you get where I'm coming from, though? As much as I want to say, oh, yeah, this person had a really good year, when it actually mattered, who showed up at the World Cup? Arguably, out of those three names that everyone's mentioning, I think only Brandon King showed up. And he didn't even play all the games. So I'm not saying that means that King should win the award, but he was the only one who actually showed up when push came to shove. But then if we're talking about consistency across the year, I mean, Puran, not that this should matter for T20s, but Puran hit 550s. Powell hit a century. That was the one against England, and 250s. Yeah. King hit 550s as well. If averages matter, King's the one with the best average. King's possibly a good shout here, you know?
You know what? I was just thinking that. I was thinking, if we're basing it on stats, obviously you'd give it to Puran or Powell. But if you're basing T20s, I mean, we've said it on the show numerous times, bilaterals in T20 are probably the least important matches in the cricketing calendar. So if you're basing it on World Cup performances when it mattered, King would slightly edge it, Mash.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. And I think King's game has shown maturity. And I think certainly we saw that with CPL as well when he was back with his home franchise, and so on and so forth. Sheldon says who scored the most runs. Well, I think it was Puran, to be fair. Yeah, Puran scored the most runs, but he also played the most matches. But Puran played 23 matches, scored 582 runs. Rovman played 22, scored 513. And Brandon played 18 and scored 480, which is why he has the best average. Obviously, Rovman's strike rate was insane, though. Rovman had a strike rate of 149 across the year, which I think we've got to take into consideration as well. Santoki, I'm letting you. I overruled you for Alzari for the ODI bowler, so I'll let you overrule me. Who we giving T20 batter of 2022 to?
You know what? It's a close one, you know, but it's not even like, you know, sometimes it can be good when you've got candidates who are close. This is just, we've been so abysmal in the format, it's actually hard to decide who should win. But you know what? Because he took on the burden of captaincy as well and was playing with that pressure and trying to lead an inexperienced side, but still managed to put up the runs consistently, I would have to give it to Nicholas Puran, you know.
There we go, people. I think that's fair enough because you have to throw in, I mean, the captaincy burden is ultimately what killed Nicholas Puran in terms of West Indies cricket, but he did try his best to lead from the front. Obviously, it flopped in the World Cup, but outside of that, he scored the most runs. And we have to remember, people, that Puran scored the most runs and he's not even an opener. It's not like he's getting the most time at the crease, so to speak.
You know what's mad? I was just trying to scramble and get some statistics about kind of the ones that people put up in the World Cup, and there's not one West Indian batter in the top 30 run scores for the World Cup. Can't even get the statistics for how abysmal that was.
One of them ones where you're just scrolling, and you can't find them. Yeah, so people, we're going to give the West Indies T20 batter of 2022 to our former T20 captain, Nicholas Puran. Congratulations, Nicholas, and enjoy that big bag that you just got. Who's he gone to? Lucknow Super Giants. You might have got the big bag, but I'm sure this award is what you cherish most, Nicholas. I'll make sure this gets across to you for the start of the year. So well done to Nicholas Puran, T20 batter of 2022. Moving swiftly on, Santoki, to T20 bowler of 2022. We were abysmal with the bat, but actually the bowling probably was the one thing that showed up in the World Cup, so to speak, at times. But throughout the year in general, T20 bowling. Who are we going for, Santoki? Who are?
Yeah, I think this is the first award where we've kind of got numerous candidates who can be nominated for the award. I think you've obviously got Jason Holder at 28 wickets, leading wicket taker in the format by a good 9 wickets. But then you've also got a kind of cluster coming in as well of Obed McCoy, Odean Smith, Akil Hussain, Alzari Joseph, and Mario Shepherd, who sort of all chipped in at moments throughout the year, took consistent wickets and kind of all had their moments in the sun, so to speak, in the format. So there's quite a few names, Mash, but what's the sort of immediate name that jumps to mind when you think of our standout T20 bowler this year?
See, I think it's actually got to go to Holder.
Yeah.
That's my gut feeling, right? It's got to go to Holder. And one of the reasons why I think it's got to go to Holder is because traditionally we've not seen Jason Holder as a go-to T20 bowler in the West Indies side, right? I think that series we played against England, was it 14 wickets he took in that series? It was something ridiculous in that 5-match series we played against England at the start of the year. And at the end of the day, it's about, in T20 cricket, you need somebody who can come in and take wickets. And I just don't think you can turn your nose up at somebody who's taken 28 wickets across the course of the year, particularly when he's not considered to be a main wicket-taking bowler per se for the West Indies in this format of cricket. That said, there are 2 bowlers in particular who I think have been relatively consistent. And again, we didn't, in the end, he didn't win ODI Bowler of the Year, but Akil Hussain has been consistent. He's got the best economy in the Caribbean or for the West Indies, which is of like the main bowlers, 7.04, 18 wickets he's taken across the year. And I think with Akil, sometimes you have to not get confused by the number of wickets and just think about that economy of 7.04 means that Akil's basically in the territory of more or less his 4 overs going for what? Like 28 runs, 27 runs, 22 runs, 23 runs, that type of thing. Obviously not peak Narain, but as close to somebody like that we're going to get where we're like, you're not going to get licked down. So even if you don't take wickets, you're not going to get licked down. So Akil comes into the conversation. The only reason Alzari doesn't come into the conversation for me is because Alzari's introduction to our T20 side came so late in the year. And which is ridiculous, of course, because how we waited so long to realize that maybe Alzari could be a strike bowler in this format of cricket, I don't know. He showed up in the World Cup for us. And going forward, I'd like to think Alzari is now going to become our go-to strike bowler in this format of cricket. But I think that just because he didn't play, which isn't his fault, but he played 10 matches in the year, I just don't think we can give it to Alzari based on that. So I think it's got to go to Holder personally.
Yeah, I think it's a credit to Alzari that we've given him the award for 2 formats so far, considering at the beginning of the year there were question marks about his ability in West Indies across all formats. And as you said, Mash, I think it was the IPL which sort of threw him into selectors' minds. He had great performances. Was it for Gujarat in the IPL, and then made his way into the West Indies side from June onwards. But as you said, as similar to Carl Mayers previously, I think it was he hasn't played enough games for him to sort of merit that award. But for me, I think in terms of T20 cricket, Akil Hussain is a close second, as you said, keeping the runs down, almost sort of doing like a Badgery role, keeping the economy down. But he's also managed to take wickets, which is important. But for me, in the T20 format, taking wickets is what is the most important thing, slowing down the runs, getting rid of big batsmen. And Jason Holder has done that in abundance, 28 wickets. I think 2022, for me, sort of was the year when Jason Holder transitioned into almost like not a specialist white ball player, but someone who you can tell is sort of moving more and more towards becoming a specialist white ball bowler, as we've seen a decline in his performances in red ball cricket. So for me, I think Jason Holder wins the award with his 28 wickets.
Fantastic. So that is our winner, people. Let me just bring this up on the screen for those who are wondering what's going on. So that is our winner for men's T20 bowler of the year. That goes to Jason Holder, people. He, of course, will be playing in the SA20 competition, which is due to bowl off very soon in the new year. Before more than likely heading across to Zimbabwe for the Test series. So well done to Jason Holder, our men's T20 bowler of 2022. Before we get into the main categories that everyone's here for, the Cuss Out and the Catfish and all of that, we must, of course, recognise the women this year. For those of you who've joined us late in the live, obviously you have missed the point at which Santoki's Wi-Fi crashed. So, so earlier in the show, I kind of gave a synopsis of what's gone on for the women's cricket team this year. Obviously, the Deandra Dottin Cuss Out. West Indies lost to South Africa, lost to New Zealand in bilaterals, got smashed by England in bilaterals, but in the midst of all that, overperformed at the World Cup to somehow make it through to the semi-finals, which is a massive overachievement. They're obviously in a state of flux. They're in a state of transition. They've just lost arguably their best player in Deandra Dottin. So it's an interesting year, Santoki. So starting with ODIs, because of course our women don't play any Test cricket, such is the nature of cricket in the world cricket, I should say. Let us go to, sorry, just making sure I've got this right up on the screen. So let's go to women's ODI batter of 2022. I feel like there's one person who's just going to sweep all of the awards, but we must discuss it all the same. I'll quickly intro this one, Santoki, and then see if you disagree with me. Now, if I don't see right at the start of the year, people forget that right at the start of the year, Deandra Dottin hit an iconic innings in South Africa. Right at the beginning, it was when was it? January the 28th. Deandra Dottin scored 150 not out off 158 balls against South Africa in the first ODI right at the beginning of the year. Deandra then went on to have some useful contributions, a couple of 330s, a 62 versus India women in the World Cup. And then obviously after March, we never saw Deandra Dottin again because she quit and said she's not playing for West Indies no more. But the reason why I start there, Santoki, is because Deandra Dottin did actually play for the West Indies this year. She may have quit the form. She may have quit playing for us, and she may have said that she's done now, but she did actually play. And when you look at raw numbers, arguably, Deandra Dottin's the person who had the best year for the West Indies. But can we give her an award if she's not about anymore? That's the question I posed to you.
Well, I'm going to go against what I said about Carl Mayers not playing enough games, because I would award it to Deandra Dottin just because on a global level, she had a phenomenal year, even though she only played January, February, March. That 150 not out against South Africa, the World Cup run, which you mentioned earlier. If you are, as you said, it's more than just numbers, but if you look at numbers, Hayley Matthews played 18 matches, scored 489, was our leading run scorer. Deandra Dottin was only 55 behind. She hit 434, only played 12 matches. So when you've got someone who's the second highest run scorer for the team and they've only played 2/3 of the matches the team has played for a year, phenomenal strike rate. I think it was 85 strike rate. Yeah, 85 strike rate, average 43. As you said, an iconic innings as well. So I think obviously it's a tricky one because she has retired from West Indies duty, but she did play for West Indies cricket. She left her mark on 2022. So for me, just because of how phenomenal those 3 months were for her, I would give it to Deandra Dottin.
It's sure to set the cat amongst the pigeons here, people. But I'm in total agreement with Santoki. I think the women's batter of the year has to go to Deandra Dottin. I know Deandra says she's done. I don't think that's a definitive. I will never come back to West Indies cricket again. I would not be surprised if Deandra possibly reneges on that at some point going forward. And if this award helps her to renege on that, then so be it. So I'm in agreement with Santoki here, people. I think the women's ODI batter of 2022 should actually go to Deandra Dottin, irrespective of her retirement from the West Indies women's team. So Deandra Dottin. Over to the bowler of 2022.
Yeah, well, I think it's only down to two names. I think it's Hayley Matthews or Chanel Henry. I think Hayley Matthews, though, has been above, considering she's an all-rounder as well. She's been phenomenal with the ball, has sort of led the line for West Indies cricket in terms of having that increased pressure as well as captain. So for her to take as many wickets as she's done and sort of set example with the ball, I think it's a no-brainer for me. I think it has to go to Hayley Matthews, Mash.
Yeah, again, I think the women's categories, unfortunately, are relatively straightforward, yeah. and it speaks to probably the I don't want to say weakness, but it speaks to where our cricket is at in that in the women's game at this particular moment in time, in so much as we still talk about the same players. And that's not because we don't have any talent coming up. We do, but unfortunately, the talent that's considered world beating, so to speak, are so far above the remaining talent that we always feel like the same players get these awards. But yes, I agree with you, Santoki. Hayley Matthews, 100%, is the ODI bowler of 2022. Just to give us stats for people to know: 18 matches, 26 wickets, an average of 24. And an economy of 4.33 on all metrics. That's better than everybody else. So it's got to go to Hayley Matthews in terms of the women's ODI bowler of the year. Straight across to T20, Santoki. T20 batter of the year.
Yeah, well, it's like you said, Mash. Again, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, we've only played 10 matches in the format. So again, it's sort of limited in terms of the data. I think you can, if you were to nominate, you can narrow it down to 3 women: Rashada Williams, Aaliyah Lane, and then Hayley Matthews. But again, for me, Hayley Matthews, 193 runs, average 19, which isn't great, but compared to everyone else, I mean, Aaliyah Lane averaged 10, Rashada Williams was 11, and then Hayley Matthews had a higher strike rate of 93. So again, for me, I think Hayley Matthews, again, in T20, just similar to ODI, she's sort of been the standout performer in 2022.
Yeah, listen, just again, speaking to the converted here, 100%. It's got to be Hayley Matthews once again as the T20 batter of the year. So I don't think that one is really in any kind of dispute, so to speak. And again, I haven't really come to the chat, people, to see what anyone's saying in the chat. But again, I think everyone will, relatively speaking, kind of agree with that. So the T20 batter of the year, people, is Hayley Matthews. Bowler, Santoki.
I'm sounding like a broken record here, but again, if we're looking at bowling, it's pretty much, I mean, Hayley Matthews took 12 wickets across the 10 games. Afi Fletcher was the next highest with 8 wickets. So for me, it has to go to Hayley Matthews. I think it's obviously a shame we've lost Anisa Mohammed, who's taken a break from cricket. I think she would have been in that list if she had been playing. But for now, again, this sort of highlights the sort of burden on Hayley Matthews in the women's game, especially with Dotting now gone. It has to be Hayley Matthews again, stand out with the ball.
Yep, Hayley Matthews, people. And again, to read those stats: 10 matches, 12 wickets at 13, economy 4.48. And again, it's so far above everybody else's contributions that it's got to go to Hayley, ladies and gents. So Hayley Matthews, our T20 batter and bowler of 2022. So just to recap that, in terms of the women's awards, we've given the ODI batter to Deandra Dottin, the ODI bowler to Hayley Matthews, and then on the screen, as you can see, obviously some of you are listening on audio, the women's T20 batter and bowler of 2022 goes to Hayley Matthews. Congratulations to Hayley and to Deandra for those awards.
There's one question in there asking how many games Stefani Taylor played in the format T20. I don't think she played in 2022, Mash. I think her last game was in 2021. So no, Stefani Taylor.
No, yes, Stefani's not played. In fact, Stefani's just been recalled for what's the, I can't remember what the series
South Africa tri-series.
Yeah, a tri-series. She's just been recalled back to the squad. So yeah, again, this is why when people have been kind of cussing out the West Indies side as of late, I'm like, okay, you take away Deandra Dottin and Stefani Taylor. Imagine your women's side has an equivalent of Stefani Taylor and Deandra Dottin, and you take them both out of the side at the same time. You're probably going to hold some licks, because as Santoki has just been saying, we're looking at who can get all these awards, and it's Hayley Matthews or nothing, basically. So really and truly, the women's side has a lot of, we're in a transition stage as we try to kind of, I guess, for want of a better word, blood in some younger talent that are going to obviously face challenges along the way, because we can't just keep on relying on Stefani Taylor. Obviously, Deandra stepped down, and Hayley Matthews. So Santoki, that's the men's and the women's awards, and it's time to move on to the kind of 4 categories that I think everyone's kind of been waiting on. the shining star of 2022, the moment of 2022, the cuss out of 2022, and the catfish of 2022, Santoki. So moving straight to the Shining Star Award. Now, the Shining Star Award's interesting because Shining Star technically should go to a youngster, technically, but it doesn't have to. It's just got to be, whether men's or women's cricket, who has shone brightest this year for the West Indies. And I'm intrigued to see what people say in the chat as well. So it can go across any of the genders. Who has shone the most? Who gets shining star for you, Santoki? Now, bear in mind, earlier on, we gave Test Batter of the Year to Craig, Test Bowler to Alzari, ODI Batter to Shea Hope, ODI Bowler to Alzari, T20 Batter to Puran, T20 Bowler to Holder. In the women's game, ODI Batter to Dottin, ODI Bowler to Haley, T20 Batter and Bowler to Haley. But that doesn't necessarily mean they're the shining star. Last year, we gave shining star to Jaden Seals. So it doesn't have to be somebody who wins one of the main awards. Who are we saying for shining star?
You know what? Similar to how the criteria we based it on for Jaden Seals last year, in terms of the quality of performances, but more so the potential and sort of signs it shows for the future, I'm going to have to give the shining star. I'm going to have to give it in terms of potential and sort of what they've added to West Indies cricket this year. I'm going to have to give it to Tagenarine Chanderpaul. I think if we're looking at shining star in terms of overall, who's performed well, you could say obviously a Craig Brathwaite has performed well. But if we're looking at it in terms of who's broken through and sort of given us hope for the future, for me it has to be Tagenarine Chanderpaul. If he broke through into the Guyana squad earlier this year, despite calls for him to be dropped by the selectors, and then that Australia series for me exceeded expectations in terms of his performance, his composure, how we faced off against the likes of Stark, Cummins, Hazelwood. So I know it's only 2 tests, so it might be controversial. But for me, us going away to Australia, as the South Africans have shown, is the toughest assignment for an international cricketer. For him to do that in an abysmal West Indies side and perform so well against world-class bowlers, for me, I think in terms of shining potential more so than what he's achieved over 2022, I'd put Tagenarine Chanderpaul as my shining star. A lot of people would say it's a small sample size, but when we've had such an abysmal year in West Indies cricket, those 2 tests can give fans a lot of hope, you know.
Thing is, as you've been talking, I've been thinking, boy, I'd just be trying to think, who can I throw at you that goes against the Tage argument? But I'm going to I'm going to look at the chat because I think there's been some good comments in the chat. So Tom says, well, Rovman won CPL and Super 50 as captain. Got a West Indies recall, technically was definitely in contention to win West Indies T20 batter of 2022. When you put together the regional strides that Rovman has made, plus his T20 year, does he win it? I'm not saying he does. I'm just saying these are some of the comments in the chat. Supernova and a couple of others are saying it's got to be Alzari Joseph because
the thing is, though, if we're bringing in Super 50, we would surely have to bring in Tage's performances in the 4-day. He scored a few centuries. Mad performances. True. There was that one innings against Barbados where he licked 24 of like 12 balls to win the game. So if we're adding in the regional season as well performances, I think that strengthens Tagenarine's argument. To be fair,
who was Tage the regional? Who was the top scorer in regional? Was it Craig or was it Tage? Was it Craig and then Tage? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, I think it was Craig and then Tage. Let me check.
Or was it John Cam? I can't even remember. This is an interesting one. I definitely think there's some merit in people who are saying Alzari Joseph. And let me explain why. Because Alzari had a breakthrough year in Test cricket, was a standout in ODI cricket, and although he only played 10 matches in T20, was exceptional across T20 cricket. Now, and the reason why I wonder if we've got to throw Alzari in there is we often forget that not that this has to go to a youngster, but Alzari's only 26. Because he's been around West Indies cricket for what feels like a decade, because he debuted so young, there's an argument to say that this was the cricketing year, where Alzari broke through in all formats of the game. So I do wonder if Alzari's got to come into the equation here in terms of shining star. Have you found those stats for the 4-day championships, Antonio?
Just look, they're buried deep on ESPN. I'm just looking for it now. But yeah, I think in terms of age, I think with West Indies cricket, it's not even applicable to kind of go by age because, as we said, opportunities are so limited. Tage is 26, for instance, and is considered a breakout star. So I think, as you rightly said, age doesn't play a factor when it comes to that. So Azari Joseph is a good candidate. A lot of people are commenting Tage is more the surprise of the year. So I guess it kind of goes onto your own interpretation of sort of the shining star of the year. I'm just trying to find.
I found it. So it was Craig. Craig was first in the 4-day championship, and Tage was second with an average of 73 200s. So yeah, you're right though to say this. If we're going to use CPL and Super 50, then we have to use Tage's performances in the regional 4-day championship. That's ultimately what got him in the test match squad.
I think for me, shining star means someone who gives you hope about the future. So last year we saw Jaden Seals against Pakistan and we thought, okay, hold on, this guy's going to lead the line with the ball for the next few years. This is good. This is a shining moment for West Indies cricket. I think Tage, I've never seen in 2022, I didn't see more positivity than when Tage was batting against the Australians in terms of what it meant for West Indians and kind of how they look forward to what he could produce going forward. So for me, the feelings that he induced in West Indian fans in what was an abysmal year means he is the shining star.
If we go with that definition, I'm willing to concede to Tage only because Alzari is already established. And we already know who Alzari is. We already know what Alzari can. Like last year, Alzari had a standout year in ODI cricket, so it's nothing new for Alzari to produce again this year in ODI cricket. What's new is that he's produced in T20 and in Test cricket as well. I personally still think it should go to Alzari, but I'm willing to concede and give Tage Narayan Chanderpaul on this one. So, people, we're going to give Shining Star of 2022, including domestic cricket in that, before anyone says, how can you give it just because of Australia? We are including Tage Narayan's breakout season. It wasn't. Yeah, we're including Tage Narayan's stats in the Red Ball domestic season as well. 5 matches, average of 73, which he then backed up in the Test match series against Australia. So we're going to give Shining Star to Tage Narayan Chanderpaul. Moving on, people. The moment of 2022. Now. The moment of 2022, people. Now, this is interesting because, like Shining Star, moment technically can mean anything. So, for example, moment of 2022 for me, Santoki, could be, what's his name? Shimron Hetmeyer not getting on the plane. That could be a moment. That could be a moment of 2022. A moment of 2022 can be Deandra Dottin dropping her retirement a letter at 2 a.m. in the morning UK time. So that could also be a moment. So moments can be different things, but lots of people said that the moment was the final, not even final, was the realization that all along Sean Paul was actually saying Chanderpaul in his music. Lots of people have messaged me saying that's the moment of 2022, the Sean Paul story. What were we at, Santoki? You're the one who busts it online. So
yeah, listen,
is that
I wasn't sure if that was moment. I wasn't sure if that was moment of the year or catfish of the year because he's been doing a 20-year catfish on those lyrics. But yeah, for context, Sean Paul, I posted a video on Twitter of Sean Paul confirming that at the beginning of every track, when he shouts out Chanderpaul, he was actually saying a tribute to Shiv Narayan Chanderpaul rather than Sean D. Paul, as a lot of people thought. Now, this went viral, got like 1 million views on Twitter, and has sort of debunked the myth of what Sean Paul was saying. So if we're going by a moment of the year in terms of West Indies cricket in mainstream media, I don't think there is a bigger moment, Mash.
Well, there can't be. Because the tweet that you put out is currently on 1 million views. West Indies, every kind of social media clickbait handle ran with the story. Go in and everybody in it quoted you going, well, and West Indian fan Santoki said that 4 years ago that he thought Sean Paul would say Chanderpaul as well. It's since been proved correct, whatever it was, right? mainstream newspapers carried the story.
Yeah.
We had people in Australia with their equivalent of like those lad Bible type stuff saying, boy, the story's reached over here. I think the other day you said that French Twitter had picked up the story. So I don't know, in the context of West Indies cricket crossing over into the mainstream in an era when we're no good, you may have done more for West Indies cricket than the West Indies cricket team. So I don't know if I don't know if the Sean Paul thing has to actually be the moment of 2022, because also we have to remember, Santoki, that a lot of people were coming out afterwards going, "Oh my God, that's what he was saying all along." So it wasn't like there were people going, "Yeah, I knew that." So does it? Does
it was a revelation, basically.
Does that win?
And then Sean Paul had to come out and confirm Chanderpaul was Guyanese, because in the clip he said he was a Trini. So that just added to it all. So I think in terms of moment, obviously I don't want to big myself up, but I think that has to be a strong contender for moment. But honourable mentions, Mash. Thomas Miller's just mentioned it in the chat. Time to burn down all the cricket pitches in the Caribbean.
You know what? I actually forgot. That's how long the year has gone on that I forgot that happened at the start of the year. You know, because that was in response to the Island series when Grandad said that West Indies cricket is a waste of time.
So all right, let's go. I'll go with Sean Paul's the moment of the year. The burn all the cricket fields down is the comical moment. But Mash, we have to do an on-field moment of the year. For you, what was on the field, on the pitch, what for you was the moment of the year for West Indies?
By on the field, you mean like things that have also happened off the field as well, right?
Yeah.
Okay. In terms of obviously related to West Indies cricket.
Yeah.
But then some will say that this is the Catfish. I think it's in terms of West Indies cricket, I feel like it's got to be Hetmeyer though, just because it almost has to be Hetmeyer, just because at that point in time, I think no matter who you were, even if you were like staunch Guyanese supporter of Hetmeyer, at that moment in time, everybody was just like, well, you know what, this is it then. This is it. Like, I think everybody accepted after that Hetmeyer story that it was almost like the lowest of the low. Like, if he'd missed one plane, I don't think anyone would have cared. But it's the fact that he missed two. I feel like for me that was the moment at which everyone around the world who takes even like a partial interest in West Indies cricket just kind of shook their heads and said, boy, they're finished out here. So I kind of feel like that's the moment of the year.
Yeah, I would pay good money to hear the phone call that Hetmeyer must have probably gave to Jimmy Adams saying, boy, you know what? Not really feeling this flight, you know. I might have to skip the World Cup. So that could be a moment of the year. For me, a few people have mentioned in the comments, it was in my head already. I think for on-field cricket performances, I think Josh De Silva's 100 in Grenada against England was a good moment. It was a lovely moment. He was with his friend Jaden Seals celebrating. You could see how much it meant for him. And I think it was a rebuttal to, you know, at the time, fans were saying across the world, do West Indies care about Test cricket? You had Josh De Silva crying on the pitch, celebrating 100. It was for a winning cause. We won the series 1-0. So for me, in terms of on-field performances, I think the Josh De Silva 100 has to win it. But overall, if we're talking about moment of the year, it has to be the Sean Paul Chanderpaul saga, because you can't really make it up.
Yeah. So I think we'll give it to Sean Paul with an honourable mention. I think that Josh one's a very good I think it's a very good answer there. So on the field, I think we give it to Josh. Off the field, Sean Paul. Right, last two awards before we end this year's award show, people. The Cuss Out of 2022. Now, let me just clarify for people what Cuss Out means. Cuss Out, I actually meant, when I said that Cuss Out's going to be a category this year, what I actually meant for Cuss Out was which individual or which particular issue was the best cuss out of 2022. So, for example, Santoki, I'm just going to give you some examples of things that I wrote down. you might say this isn't a cuss out, but these are just examples. I've got Dre Russ cuss out. I've got Evan Lewis Facebook cuss out. I've got the Caribbean wide cuss out after the Ireland series defeat in January. I've got the post World Cup cuss out. I've got Deandra Dottin's resignation cuss out. Am I missing any? I feel like I'm missing some there, but those are some of the cuss outs that I wrote down.
I think those are all good cuss outs. It's been an unprecedented year for the cuss outs. I think another honourable mention goes for Desmond Haynes saying he couldn't bother to message Narayan or contact Narayan to see if he's going to play in the World Cup. But for me, Mash, I think we talked about it just now. The Hetmeyer missing the play just took it to another level. I think the cuss out for that was unprecedented just because it wasn't fitness related, it wasn't injury related. He literally did not want to get on a plane to go to a World Cup, which should be the pinnacle of a player's career. And I think your moment on 99.94, where we do more regular episodes, where you said, I'm done with Shimon Hetmeyer, was a classic moment, which sort of captured West Indian fans' thoughts and feelings towards Hetmeyer. And I think if we're looking at it from that point of view, I think that's a turning point in terms of Guyanese fans in particular defending Hetmeyer. I think there's no real coming back for him after that. So for me, I think the cuss out of the year in terms of what united the region in anger and cussing out the player was Shimon Hetmeyer, just because we've never seen that happen before. A player refusing to take a plane to go to a World Cup for no other reason, for no specific reason. So for me, that has to win as the cuss out of the year.
It's worth pointing out, by the way, that as we end the year, we still don't know why he didn't get on the plane. Like, we still 3 months later, no reasonable excuse has been provided as to why the man didn't get on the plane, you know. So I don't think we'll ever hear a justification for what happened there. Just some honourable mentions, because I see a few people mention it. Sheldon Smith says the cuss out throughout the whole year against Simmons. I agree with that. I think that was up there as well. The Pollard cuss out against the media, that probably deserves a very strong shout out as well. Rising Bowler say, when I said who is Brian Lara, the cuss out against Chaser's frontline spinner. Did I miss another one? I thought I saw another one there, but yeah. So there's still, those are some other honourable shout outs and examples of cuss outs. But I agree with Santoki. I think generally speaking, Fireball says there's still some uncles defending Hetty, but I think generally speaking, the Hetty situation caused exasperation across the whole cricket landscape in the Caribbean. And anybody who had the ability to kiss teeth after that situation, and just, you could hear everyone's sighs around the region. So yeah, I think Hetmeyer wins that one. So the Hetmeyer missing the plane and the cuss out after him missing that plane twice wins for cuss out. And then lastly, Santoki. Lastly, the Catfish, the final award of 2022, the Catfish of 2022. Last year, for those who don't know, we gave that to DJ Bravo's song prior to the World Cup. After we
I was listening to that song like a few weeks ago. Do you know how ridiculous it sounds in hindsight?
So that was a really like deserved winner last year, the DJ Bravo World Champion song. Thankfully, there was no song recorded this year for the World Cup, and we flopped even worse. But what or who is the Catfish of 2022, Santoki? I'm going to throw this to you, and this is harsh. This is harsh, what I'm about to say. And I want to say on record that this is not a reflection of what I feel about this cricketer, but I feel that this is Catfish of 2022. Santoki, Nicholas Pooran's captaincy.
I thought you were going to say Austin Chase, you know.
No, Nicholas Pooran's captaincy. I wonder if that's Catfish, Santoki. Not because you and I thought that he was going to be a brilliant captain, but just because of how dreadful it all was. I wonder if that has to, like, remember, we have to remind ourselves often what was going on in the region prior to Nicholas taking the captaincy. Remember, and this could easily have won Cuss Out of 2022. the whole region was coming for Pollard, remember? They basically ran Pollard out of town. I still have the receipts of people who tweeted us and on the forums all over the Caribbean saying, we got to give it to Pooran because he's the man to take us forward. The same people who ran Pollard out of town were going, he's got to be given to Pooran. Honestly, and Pooran's my guy, but could he have had a worse run as Captain Santoki? Could it have gone any worse than it actually went? I think that's catfish. Is there a bigger catfish than that?
You know what? Yeah, I didn't actually think of that, which sort of shows you how the catfish is still running. I didn't actually consider how dreadful poor man's captaincy was. I think he's kind of been helped, weirdly enough, by the fact it was such a bad team. It's almost as if it's been excused, as if what could someone do with the sort of team we took to the World Cup. But even in that context, our performances under his captaincy in that 6-month spell were abysmal. And there, as you said, there was a belief, based on the fact he's a world-class player, you know, Pollard respected him highly and sort of anointed him as the heir to the captaincy, that he would have a tactical mind. But tactically, I don't know what his vision was or what he sort of left on the field as a West Indies captain. So it could be a catfish. I think honourable mentions for me, Romario Shepherd and Odean Smith bagging $1 million deals in the IPL. Listen,
yeah, actually, wait a minute. But bro, remember,
listen.
The man got $1 million. The man got $1 million, and now his next deal is 60K. Bro,
listen, do you know how they're gonna teach this hustle story in Guyanese schools for the next 20 years? Romario Shepherd, within the space of a year, went for 100 runs in the Super 50 against Trinidad. Within a year, my man was banking up $1 million in the IPL just based on the fact he was death bowler who was West Indian. They were like, you know what? This guy might be the next DJ Bravo, you know? Let's take him on. 1 million. Bag that 1 million, never to be seen again. Similar with Odean Smith. So those could be catfish of the year. I think Roston Chase going as our frontline spinner to the big Australia tour. Catfish. I don't know what Roston Chase had. Roston Chase had man thinking he was Sonny Ramadan out here. And then final catfish as well. I think this has to be a catfish. Yannick Carey going to the World Cup, because the way he was hyped up as a leggy and someone who was worth taking to the World Cup. His first match against Australia, he went for 15 runs off 4 overs, took a wicket. The commentators were raving on about him. Yannick Carey, man, they can't work him out. He's bamboozling everyone. Second match, got lit 28 runs off 2 overs. Never saw him again in the World Cup. Didn't play one game in the World Cup. So for me, those are 3 catfishes. You know what, though? I think the IPL, just talking about it, I think the IPL one might edge even the poor round one, you know?
I actually think you're right. 1 million to 60K. Those 1 million. Listen, if Romario Shepherd did a documentary called 1 million to 60K, that could be a Netflix special, you know? How did you catfish 1 million? I think man saw Tinder Swindler or whatever it was called on Netflix and said he's going to do an IPL big swindle. But just some other ones to throw out there. Narine, I think Narine is in there. I think Narine might be the biggest catfish in West Indies cricket. You know, man said, a couple of months before World Cup, I'm about. Give me a call.
Yeah, but hold on, because he told this to me to my face. I interviewed him. He was like, "Listen, I'm ready to play. Give me a call." But then Desmond Haynes countered it by saying he didn't actually give him a call. He said to Nicholas Pooram, "What's up, Narine? See what he's saying." And that was it. They never, as far as we're aware, the selectors never even called Narine. So I don't even know if that's a catfish. But yeah, Narine in there. Who else? I'm sure there must be another. Well, Hetmeyer missing the plane as a catfish.
Yeah, so the only reason I'm not mentioning Hetmeyer is because we've already given him Cuss Out of 2022. I can't give him catfish as well. But here's a controversial one. This is a controversial one. Boy, is Desmond Haynes a catfish? Oh my God.
Man said it's the end of the year. He's gonna come. He's gonna come. He's gonna come for Desmond Haynes. You know, unprecedented. Listen,
but hold on, Telki, he selected Roston Chase. So
listen,
I just need to know if he's a catfish.
I've been thinking this all year. Yeah, I know. Obviously, Desmond Haynes. We salute his playing career, Gordon Greenwich, all that. Mash. Firstly, what has he done to justify being a selector? And secondly, some of his opinions, some of the statements he gives, technically. So, for instance, saying that you've asked Puran to speak to Narayan rather than you as the selector, it doesn't make sense. Roston Chase went as frontline spinner. It doesn't make sense. Yannick Carey went as a frontline spinner to the World Cup. Nothing really There's been a lot of inconsistencies, but the fact that he's Desmond Haynes it's almost a taboo to sort of criticize him.
That's why I've thrown it in there. So I keep saying that if other selectors had made decisions like taking Roston Chase as your frontline spinner to Australia, the media would have crucified them. And I think Des is lucky because obviously Desmond Haynes is West Indies cricket royalty.
Yeah.
So eventually he will get a cuss out, but I think it'll take a lot longer for him to actually get a cuss out because of his reputation in the game. But go on, sorry.
I've seen a few comments saying Evan Lewis. Technically, because Evan Lewis,
catfish,
it's a catfish, because technically Evan Lewis, big man, big stalwart in the side, done the Facebook cuss out of the selectors after not getting picked, got his chance. They made him skip the fitness test, got his chance into the World Cup squad, did nothing. Teddy's taken a break from cricket. So technically, Evan Lewis has had a catfish 2022 as well. You know what? There's so many catfishes. As Tom Miller said in the last week, we might just have to say West Indies cricket has been a catfish the whole year.
The whole of 2022 did, because you could argue even West Indies they catfished us. So they catfished us in 2020 cricket by beating England at the start of the year, then crashing out of the World Cup. They catfished us by beating England in Test cricket and then getting bowled out for 77 by Australia by the time the year came to an end. So arguably, you could throw the whole of West Indies in it.
Even the power, sorry, just to go back to the Desmond Haynes, even the power that Desmond Haynes has was triggered by a catfish of Ronnie Sarwan taking the job. Then 2 months later, Ronnie Sarwan took the job, said, you know what, I'm going to change the fitness standards in West Indies. We're going to bring it back. Yeah, Ronnie Sarwan and Desmond Haynes, they're here, man. They're here to change the game. Literally 2 months later, Ronnie Sarwan, boy, you know what? Yeah, this job's looking a bit sticky for me. I might have to jump out. So the catfish of Ronnie Sarwan led to Desmond Haynes essentially being almost the sole selector, I guess, in terms of a specialist selector for the year.
Point. Yeah, that's a good
point.
So
that sort of gave him the power. And as you said, no one has dared to sort of criticize Desmond Haynes, but I think it's a completely valid point, Mash, to say that 2022, if you're correlating a selector's job with our on-field performances, Desmond Haynes has been a catfish.
So who are we picking then?
We might just have to say West Indies as a whole has been a catfish. It's been a year of catfishes, man.
Can we give it to the whole of West Indies cricket? Do they deserve to be the catfish of 2022? Just everything. Women, under-19s, men's, administration.
Listen, Deandra Dottin dropping her retirement speech at 1 a.m. during Barbados' Olympic campaign. It was also a mad catfish.
That should have gone in. That almost could have been moment of 2022 as well, you know. Oh my God. Whilst playing in the competition with more games to come. Boy, I don't even know, you know. I think for the jokes, I think it's got to, as much as it could be West Indies for the whole of 2022, the only reason I don't want to do that is because arguably in Test cricket, they had a relatively positive year. It feels like we can't just throw the whole of West Indies cricket in. So I think if we're going to go individual, I think it boils down to three things, three people. And people in the chat, in the live chat, let us know. These are the three. Desmond Haynes as the selector, Nicholas Puran as captain, or Romario Shepherd's IPL swindle. Which one of those three things is the biggest catfish of 2022?
Yeah. If you put in the comments, we might have to go by majority vote for this one, Mesh. There's so many catfishes. See what people... Oh, my God.
We're going to see. Everyone put it, so I'll say it again. So Lindy says it's Romario Shepherd. So he's already in the lead. I'm going to keep a tally of this. Howan says Desmond Haynes is selector. Thomas Miller's thrown in a late one, the standard of Super 50. Boy, I didn't even think about that, you know. I can't even keep up. Nomadic says Desmond Haynes.
Well, listen, people are turning on Haynes, you know.
007 says Haynes and Puram. Rising Bowler says Romario. Summit says, boy, people going quick.
Wait, hold on.
Mash,
you might be the catfish of the year, you know, because Desmond Haynes bigged you up in a press conference, you know, said you're doing a good job, and like you turn around and stabbed him in the back.
That's why I didn't even want. No, hold on. hold on. That's why I didn't even want to say it, you know. I just want to say that I put that out there just as a theoretical argument. I just put it out there. I'm not saying that I think Desmond Haynes is the catfish of 2022. I can't help it if other people say it is. I'm just putting it out there for discussion.
Oh my days. Poor man, there's quite a few for poor man, you know.
007 says we're the catfish of 2022.
Oh my days. 007, you need to explain that. Someone saying Barbados' CPL campaign.
Yeah, Orlando makes a good point. If we're going to say the test team gets a bye, then you can't throw Des under the bus, because who selected the test team? It was him. So at the end of the day, and I agree with Orlando in that sense that you can't have a selector for some things that don't work, and then things that do work. Well, who gets the praise for that then? So I agree with Orlando on that. You lot are out of order for throwing Desmond Haynes under the bus. What do you mean? He can't be the catfish.
Guy in the Amazon Warriors as well, you know, playing in front of the home crowd in the finals for the first time. Fumbled. That could be a catfish. I think it has to be Romario Shepherd, just because there's a monetary value to it as well. $1 million. Yeah.
Although I actually think it should be Puram. It's not Puran's fault. It's not Puran's fault. I hasten to add that. I'm not saying it's his fault, but I still maintain, could his captaincy have gone? When Puran took the captaincy, and if he had written down worst case scenario for his captaincy, well, everything happened, didn't it? Yeah, we won we won nothing. Beat Netherlands in ODIs. Beat Bangladesh in T20s. Basically, things you're supposed to do. Got licked down by everybody else. And then crashed out the World Cup without even making the mains. We did worse in the World Cup this year than we did last year. When you put all that together, isn't that the worst case scenario for anyone's captaincy? So me personally, Santoki, I think it should go to Puran's captaincy. But I actually think the Romario thing is funnier. So I can cope with Romario winning catfish.
I'm happy to concede it to Puran. I think in this case you presented a valid argument, and I think we'll really know in hindsight once we see what the next captain sort of can produce for this white ball team. But as you said, probably it was the worst possible campaign you can have as a captain, and considering his reputation and kind of the hopes we had, you could say it was a catfish.
Yeah, let me just write that down. So Puran captaincy. So people, there you have it. We said to Santoki and I said pre-show, let's try and make sure this doesn't go longer than an hour and a half. We pretty much got it bang on time. If you're in the live right now and you haven't pressed like and you haven't pressed subscribe, unless you're already a subscriber, please do so before you leave the show. If you're listening to this on the audios, obviously, just subscribe to Caribbean Cricket Podcast on whatever podcast platform you listen to. If you're listening to this on replay on YouTube, then obviously do press like, do press subscribe, and you can support the Caribbean Cricket Podcast at www. I don't even know our own thing, boy. See, at www.patreon.com/Carib Cricket. And just to run down through the winners again, in case you joined us late. Men's Test Batter of the Year, Craig Brathwaite. Men's Test Bowler of the Year, Alzari Joseph. Men's ODI Batter of the Year, Shea Hope. Men's ODI Bowler of the Year, Alzari Joseph. Men's T20 Batter of the Year, Nicholas Puran. T20 Bowler of the Year, Jason Holder. Women's ODI Batter of the Year, Deandra Dottin. Bowler of the Year, Hayley Matthews. Women's T20 Batter and Bowler of the Year, Hayley Matthews. Shining Star of the Year, Tej Narayan Chanderpaul. Moment of the Year, Sean Paul admitting that he said Chanderpaul, not Shaunderpaul, as exposed by Santoki on worldwide media. The Cuss Out of the Year, the Caribbean uniting to finally be done with Shimron Hetmeyer. And the Catfish of the Year is Nicholas Puran's captaincy. Ladies and gentlemen, that's been the Caribbean Cricket Podcast Awards of 2022. Sumit, thank you very much for that late. Didn't even throw a comment in there. Thank you very much for that support at the deaf there. Great deaf bowl in there, Sumit. Thank you so much for that contribution. Middle stump Yorker. But thank you so much, people, for joining us for yet another Caribbean Cricket Podcast show in 2022. That's our final. Oh, yeah, that should be our final CCP show of the year. Of course, we'll be back in 2023. Big things planned. We got some authors coming on. We got some authors coming on. We got a guest coming on at the start of next year, hopefully. Which, yeah, just look out for it, people. We got some big things planned for 2023. And if last thing, people, here's the last thing. If you know any company that you feel should be sponsoring the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, hit them up and say, you know what? You need to sponsor these guys because they're doing the most for West Indies cricket. We're going to finally get sponsorship in 2023. We're going to take this serious. But thank you so much. Listen, Santoki, let me give you the final words. 007, thank you for the super chat at the end. Hayden Walsh Jr. Catfish. It's too late. We've given it to Lucas Piran's captaincy, but thank you for the shout, the super chat all the same, 007. Santoki, final words.
Yeah, Mash, I think it's been an exhausting year for West Indies cricket fans. Never a dull day in West Indies cricket. But, we move, Mash. We're back again 2023, as you said. We've got a lot of content planned, some regular guests coming on. If you feel like we should get someone on the show who you can think of, obviously just drop us a message on social media, any suggestions who you think we'll be back in 2023 with a bang. So look out for that Caribbean Cricket Podcast. As Mashal said, like, comment, subscribe, share the word about the movement. And if any of you have any kind of ideas or know any companies who you think would be great to sponsor the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, just drop us a message or email us at caribcricket@gmail.com. But once again, guys, thank you very much for tuning in. It's been a great episode. Some good times of giving out these awards, some fun moments, and long may it continue into 2023. So we wish you all a happy and pleasant new year.
Indeed, people. Happy New Year. Peace.
We rule the cricket world. Now the rule seems coming.
Welcome to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things West Indies cricket. By the fans, for the fans.